How you doing, everybody? This is Mehka King, host and founder of CashColorCannabis and CashColorCannabis podcast, and you are now watching Cannabis TV.
Hi guys, it is Tamika L. Sims here, right here, ready for another edition of Cannabis TV. Now, you guys know that we keep it super exclusive, super exclusive. And so I am so excited about today's guest on today. We have been following him on Cannabis, our Instagram and social media platform. So a lot of great things going on in his market. So we're really looking forward to today's conversation. So I am going to bring to you guys Mr. Mehka King, CEO of CashColorCannabis. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself today?
I am doing just fine. Thank you. And again, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time. We really appreciate it.
That's no problem.
So to introduce yourself to our audience, tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. My name is Mehka King. I am host of the Cash Color Cannabis podcast, but I'm also founder of Cash Color Cannabis overall, which Cash Color Cannabis, the umbrella is CashColorCannabis.com, Cash Color Cannabis podcast, and now Cash Color Cannabis Presents, which is a web series we're working on. That's basically us doing the same interviews we do on the podcast or on the website, just more visual this time. But my background as a journalist, I came up as a freelance journalist. I've had a chance to write for a lot of outlets, whether it be hip hop or on the sports side of things. And I got into cannabis and cannabis media primarily back in 2015 when I first started a documentary called The Color Green, Cash Color Cannabis. And The Color Green, I actually stopped producing that at the end of 2016. And it coincided with us doing our first episode of the podcast, in which we also launched in December of 2016. So the podcast took on a life of its own, and we've been doing that now for the last 5 years, and it's been amazing. We've had some great guests on the show. We've had some great people come by and just share their energy with us, and we've been blessed to be able to watch the cannabis industry, especially from the Black experience, grow slowly over the last 5 years.
That is great. So now I'm a writer by trade too. So I heard you say that you were a journalist. So I think
Yes.
that's awesome. So how did you get started in writing? Has it always been an interest or a passion of yours, or where did that come from?
Yeah, well, it's always been an interest of mine, and the more I get asked that question, the more I realize how much it's been an interest of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an interest of mine since I was a kid. I would even tell my wife how I grew up sitting in my parents' bedroom watching 60 Minutes, and how Ed Bradley to me was one of the coolest people on earth, and
Yeah.
and how even through media now, I see subtle images of journalism that I know sparked my mind as far as being a journalist. Like, I was recently watching a Netflix documentary, Crack. And one of their what the opening scenes is Public Enemy's Night of the Living Basshead, their video. And I told my wife, I said, if you remember, MC Light and the host of Rap City were actually journalists in that video. They were being the Black CNN, and they were going from city around. They were going around the project interviewing people who were hooked on dope and dope dealers. I said, it's really been ingrained in me for life. That this is something I felt like I knew I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to be on that side of the camera. I wanted to be able to tell our stories from our perspective. I wanted to be, like Chuck D said, I wanted to be the Black CNN.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Now you're a native of Boston.
Yeah, Boston, Mattapan.
So how did we get to Atlanta? What brought you down south?
Man, I've been down south for a while. Like, I'm born and raised in Boston, Mattapan to be exact, for everybody who's actually from the city of Boston.
Okay.
I went to college at Johnson C. Smith University. I'm in Charlotte,
Okay.
North Carolina. So I went to a HBCU, and I followed the footsteps of my brother and sister. My sister went to Morris Brown College here in Atlanta, and my brother went to Alabama A&M. So I wanted to go to a Black college, and I ended up having the chance when I went to Johnson C. Smith. So I was in Charlotte for 10 years. I started my journalism career. Started from an intern when I was in school. Started as an intern for the Charlotte Post and Charlotte Magazine,
Okay.
and from there I started really getting I started really getting my feet wet when it came into the journalist industry. But I lived in Charlotte for 10 years, and I always been back and forth in Atlanta. Like, my sister lives here. Like I said, she
Okay.
graduated from Morris Brown. A lot of my good friends from Boston ended up going to school in the AUC, whether it was Clark, Morris, Morehouse, or Spelman.
Okay.
So when I was in Charlotte, which is a 4-hour drive, I go to Atlanta any chance I got, just to go hang out and go hit the clubs and be able to see that scene even as it grew as well. It was just really dope.
Yeah.
So when I had the chance to move in 2012, I took the chance to move. Like, I felt like I did everything I could do in Charlotte. I was so much in Atlanta that people actually thought I lived there anyway.
Okay.
So I figured it's around that time. It wasn't that expensive. I was like, it's probably the best time to try to make a move before it gets too expensive. So 2012, I ended up down here. Me and my wife, me and my girlfriend at the time, but she's my wife now. But me and
Yeah.
my girlfriend at the time moved down to Atlanta, and we've been down here ever since. You know, it's definitely, I can definitely consider this my third home, and that's not to be
Okay.
any disrespect to Atlanta, but Charlotte definitely has a place too. I was there for 10 years, and
Absolutely.
Boston's number one, but
Mhm.
Atlanta's definitely a place I consider home. I've had a lot of great friends here. I have my family here. I literally feel like I have roots even before I came here. So yeah, Atlanta has just been everything for me so far.
That is awesome. So, we're in South Carolina and Columbia to be exact. So
Ah,
Atlanta,
Columbia. I
yes.
used to be in Columbia a lot, man. Columbia, Rock Hill. Matter of fact, I got a funny story about Charleston.
Oh, wow.
Charleston,
We want to
South
hear it. We
Carolina,
want to hear it.
scared the mess out of me, baby. I went down there one time with a friend of mine, and I told my wife I ain't never been. No, I had told her when I was telling her the story. I have never been in the city, and I've been a lot of places in my existence. I have never been in a city where I was more scared in my whole entire life than when I was in Charleston, South Carolina. I ain't never heard people speak so boldly about killing people. I went to a speakeasy in the middle of the woods. It felt
Oh,
like it was a movie. I was like, this is dope. I love the African feel. I love the blackness, but get me all the way out of Charleston by the morning.
well, I know that that's a big difference coming from Boston, right? So
Facts.
we love Charleston is actually one of my favorite cities to go and travel and visit. So you'll get used to it. Start coming here a little more frequently.
Yeah, you
Uh,
know what? And also do regular tourist stuff. Like I consider myself an
yeah,
urban tourist. I always want to know where the inner city is. Like wherever I grew up, I want to be there too. And that's where
yeah.
you end up finding scary places.
Oh,
So make sure you do a regular tourist trip.
I definitely will. Now, I've never considered Charleston a scary place, but you know what? I can appreciate your experience for sure. Appreciate your experience for sure. So let's transition to talking about cannabis industry. So, of course, with your background in hip hop and culture and studying music, politics, and the other things that you've written about, what was the push that really drove you into the cannabis industry? And what did you think that this industry was lacking from a Black media perspective that you saw yourself being in position to actually fill?
I felt they lacked black media. You lack black faces behind the screens. You lack black faces in the editorial rooms. You lack black faces as writers. And I'm talking about staff writers, not saying people you just pick up here and there. They lack that kind of effort, and I saw that early. But really, it was around getting the same time when I was doing the documentary was when I really got that spark in my mind that what we're doing could really be a huge asset to the industry because yeah, at that moment, and still, I mean, I can still speak about now. At right this second, you still don't see black faces as editors. You still don't see black faces behind the screen having these conversations where normally people being interviewed or the people being asked about social equity, how you feel about walking out of jail now and then walking into this. We normally get those type, you're on that side. We're rarely seeing somebody on the other side. And growing up, in my household, I had a chance to see black media up close. Like in my household, we had Black Enterprise, we had Essence, we had Ebony's, still do. I got some of the old school tall Ebony's still in my house right now. You know
Wow,
what I mean?
yeah.
I grew up seeing the source happen. I grew up when BET was going on. Like it wasn't weird to me to see a black face as the person delivering the news. Even going back to watching 60 Minutes and Ed Bradley, it wasn't weird to me. But I felt like in the cannabis space, that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
And I felt like rest in peace to Reggie Osei. He the Combat Jack podcast. He was an editor over at Source, and he was one of the pioneers in the podcast industry as well. I had a chance to speak to Reggie before he passed away about the cannabis industry and how he felt this could impact the Black community. And I asked him from a journalistic perspective, like more importantly, what can we do to bring more Black writers to speak about cannabis? And this was again 2016.
Mhm.
And he told me the reason why you're not seeing more Black writers, even on the hip hop side, talk about cannabis is because we're not cultivating them. Like we cultivated hip hop journalists, we cultivate people who cover politics and people who cover sports. Nobody's cultivating Black journalists to cover cannabis. So I felt like Cash Color Cannabis, when I moved into the podcast side, that Cash Color Cannabis can honestly be that, especially with the website, CashColorCannabis.com. And I've had a chance to employ Black journalists. Shout out to my girl Iana Edward and Elena Dorsey. I've had a chance to employ Black writers who understand this space better than most people do. And I feel like that's our pace. We're able to help cultivate the next round of what you're going to see when it comes to Black journalism and cannabis.
I love that. And, of course, we can appreciate that being a Black-owned media company as well in this space. That's one of the things that we saw too. And what I've learned is, and maybe this is also your experience, is that when you're thinking about entering cannabis industry, you really need to bring who you are to the table. Like, not everybody is going to want to own a dispensary or a retail store, or even create an ancillary product. But I can, if I'm in PR, I can be a PR expert in the cannabis industry. If
Right.
I'm in media or if I'm in broadcasting, I can do those things in the cannabis industry. Are you finding the same sort of narrative being told, or is it a different experience from your perspective?
No, I feel like is a new narrative being created that you can take the skill set that you had outside of this industry and basically use it over here. It's not a huge jump, outside of the product you're selling or outside of the product you're speaking about. It's not necessarily a huge jump. I speak often to some of my friends in media still about how you really could transition over to this side. I have a friend of mine in LA right now, my man Jake. I've been trying to pull Jake over to the cannabis side for years now. Like, bro, you already are almost there. You're a cannabis consumer. You're knee deep in hip hop. Why don't you just come over here and just do a couple of stories?
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things that with cannabis is it's an easy transition if you have that type of skill set. If you have a background in marketing, if you have a background in PR, especially these are avenues that are actually needed right now. Especially when it comes to a branding perspective, when it comes to a marketing perspective, you can't do so much on social media. So
Mhm.
you need somebody who can kind of help you finesse those kind of waters that you might not necessarily be able to do. And why not pull somebody from a traditional standpoint of marketing and ask them to come over here? Again, it's not the biggest leap. Like it's really not. It's not the biggest leap to jump into.
Yeah, no, we have found the same thing as well. Now, Mecca, of course, there's a lot that's been happening in the news, a lot politically. We have a
Yeah.
new president that's in office now. And while we know President Biden doesn't favor legalization, I think he is on speed to, it definitely enact some federal reform. Now, we also know that this industry has kind of been built on the backs of Black and brown people. So what do you think from a political perspective? Are you looking forward to some of the changes that's going to be happening, hopefully across the country, now that President Biden is in office?
I'm optimistic. I think that one thing that the cannabis industry has as far as an advantage is that there's now a number of people in Congress right now. When there's a number of people in the Senate who really want to see something happen when it comes to cannabis, or at least open to having a conversation. Where in the past you weren't have too many people who are open.
That's true.
Even in Georgia, Georgia's a referendum state. We would need these people to vote for us, and I feel like what we just saw happen in the political in the presidential election is going to be something that's going to spur a lot more noise here, especially when it comes to politicians being more vocal to speak up about this and being more confident about standing behind it. I think it's going to be, I'm very optimistic. I do want to see where it goes. I'm a big supporter of decriminalization. I'm a big
Yeah,
supporter of cannabis banking. I
yeah.
think there's plenty of things we can do. You know what I'm saying? That should have already been enacted. That would be a massive help. But I'm very optimistic to see where we're going. I think that I did an interview last night with my friend Joe Salone, who he's the owner of the Georgia Hemp Company down here in Georgia,
Okay.
and we had this same conversation. And Joe's optimistic on the same in the same reasons. He predicts that maybe in the next 4 years. I would hope to see that in the next 4 years, but I also hope to see again banking be, saying it'd be a lot easier for you to bank as a cannabis brand. I'd like to see really decriminalization, decriminalize the plant first,
Yeah.
and let's get there, because legalization is something that I don't know. I'm still a big fan of the black market. To be completely honest with you, I think legalization is a cool thing to say, but I'm a super fan of the black market. I will always support that side. Excuse me, the legacy market. I always support that side.
Got you. Got you, definitely. So, we did an interview with the founder of Dope CFO, who focuses on accounting for cannabis entrepreneurs. And one of the things he said is that he thinks the South is really sort of the next wave of cannabis. Because, in the grand scheme of things, we're in the South traditionally Republican. They don't necessarily favor cannabis legalization. What do you think do you have the same opinion? Do you think that the South is like that next big wave that's going to happen in cannabis industry and really cause us to move legalization efforts forward?
When it comes to the hemp side, most certainly. We definitely have the agriculture. We have the space down here in the
Yes.
South. I mean, between North Carolina, I mean, yeah, especially North Carolina, South Carolina. You talk about Georgia,
Yeah.
Alabama. You talking about a lot of land that could produce a lot of plant. So yeah, from that perspective, I see the South being very much a power player. But I've also seen it happen again, just what we just saw in what we just saw for the presidential elections said a lot. You know how much light got poured into into not just Georgia but the city of Atlanta,
Yes.
and how that turned a lot of that turned a lot of eyes to everything that was already happening down here, from Cash Colored Cannabis to some of the major people we had who were already fighting for cannabis. So I think it's around the corner. I think that we've already done, especially people in these cities in these states. You can go all the way down to minorities for medical marijuana with Roz McCarthy in Orlando and what they're doing in Florida. As long as we've had these people in place, these faces of color in place who are already making these moves, I think we're definitely going to start seeing more conversations start leaning towards what's going on in the South, what's actually happening in the South, especially in Atlanta. Like Atlanta literally has its own. Atlanta is a world in its own. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to cannabis, like we actually have legal cannabis brands come from other cities and do stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're already in that space. So yeah, I I don't disagree with them. I think that the South is going to be in the spotlight, but the South does have something to say. Shout out to Outkast. You know, it's
Yeah.
always been the way.
That is so true. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Atlanta market because we do see a lot happening down there, especially in Georgia. Georgia is a state as well. Not so much happening in South Carolina. Of course, the hemp side, the CBD side, because we do have a lot of farmland here. But Atlanta, I call it Little New York. There's a much larger market, have a lot more going on. So, what are you kind of seeing? Some of the trends that's happening in Atlanta as well, and the movements that you're honored to be a part of.
In Georgia, the only thing you honestly can do, really, and even that's kind of still up in the air. You know what I mean? Is CBD and hemp. Like that's really the only thing you can really do. Now that doesn't say other things don't happen down here, because it clearly does. Like if you
Yeah,
ever just look on Instagram, it
yeah,
clearly does. We clearly have a thriving economy that's
yes.
being supported by cannabis. But I literally almost forgot your question. But I feel like with Atlanta, where we are in Atlanta, it's amazing to see. Like I really can't put my finger on why this even exists. Like I even tell people, even with Cash Color Cannabis, it's amazing that Cash Color Cannabis exists, and not only exists in the space that it does, that it still exists. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason why I should have been the lone black voice for yelling what we're yelling. You know, saying in a city that's not legal at all, in a state that's not legal at all, we can't grow any plant.
Yeah.
But what we do realize is how we could use what we have. And it goes back to realizing what your skill set is. You know, there's plenty of people. We have Cash Color Cannabis isn't the only podcast or web series tailored towards cannabis consumers in Atlanta. We have at least six. You
Wow.
know, so that's six people who had a media background who said I can use my skill set here, versus people in legal states who focus more on how can I get a license maybe, or
Yeah.
focus more how they can get on that side of the industry.
Mhm.
Atlanta's in a good place because we really have a lot of hustlers. We have a lot of people who do have various backgrounds and various skill sets, and they'll figure it out. And most certainly they have figured it out. These last 3 years have been so eye-opening, even for me, that how much y'all will just figure out how to keep it moving.
That's right. That's right. Well, that is so wonderful. So, what is your one piece of advice for someone that's watching this broadcast, no matter their background, for entering into the cannabis industry? What do you say to them?
I say, I think you kind of hit the nail early. First, bring yourself. You know, whatever it is you do, bring you. Like what I tell people all the time, what I'm not going to be is I'm not very. If you listen to our show isn't necessarily black and white when it comes to cannabis. I feel like the black cannabis experience, you have to bring in music, you have to bring in politics, you have to bring in people who ain't even in the cannabis space. Literally, all these things actually do enter into the black cannabis experience.
Mhm.
Bring your knowledge and bring yourself. You know what I mean? Like this, we have enough people who can have conversations and they can cannabinoid you to death. But what are you bringing to the table that's going to really spark somebody to really sit down and say, I want to learn more, not just not getting lectured to. And that's from the media side. What are
Yeah.
you going to bring to the table? You should bring yourself, your personality, and what you feel like is the spark that's going to make somebody say, I want to get involved, I want to learn more, or I want to do something.
Yeah, that's great. So again, you guys, we told you we keep it uber exclusive right here on Cannabis TV. Thank you again so much, Mehka, for giving us a few minutes of your time. Let everybody know how they can connect with you and what you have coming up next.
Sure. The best way to connect with us is to go to CashColorCannabis.com. You can find all of our social media links, but if you're not there, you can follow us on Instagram at CashColorCannabis or Twitter at CashColorCanna. You can also find us on Facebook at CashColorCannabis Podcast. Also, we have Atlantabis clothing that I'm actually wearing right now. You can always shop with us at AtlantabisClothing.com. Something else you can find at CashColorCannabis.com. But as far as what we got coming up next is Cash Color Cannabis Presents. We're literally working on the web series. We just finished the first 6 episodes of season 1.
Oh,
So we should be turning that in on Friday. And hopefully we can start our launch date, if not next Thursday, the following Thursday, where we can start letting people see the work that we're doing. Cash Color Cannabis Presents is really supposed to be a super extension of CashColorCannabis.com and Cash Color Cannabis Podcast, where we're able to dive a little bit deeper into conversations. We're able to have a little bit more of a controlled conversation with people. And we really get a chance to get into people's backgrounds, not just in cannabis, but just as a Black person in this experience and a Black person in this space. So look forward to that. Cash Color Cannabis Presents. We'll be able to announce our streaming partners shortly, but we just finished the first 6 episodes of season 1, and I'm excited about that.
That is wonderful. Congratulations. I'm going to say congratulations in advance for what we know will be a huge success to you and to your team. So you guys know all of that information is up on the screen to make sure that you connect with Cash Color Cannabis on all of their platforms as well as their website. And while you're there, go ahead and cop some merch, some Atlantabis clothing. Also, we want to make sure that we extend that level of support. So again, you guys know where to find us. Cannabiscuits.com is our website. Follow us on all of our social media at Canna_biscuits on Instagram and Twitter, as well as make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Cannabiscuits TV, where you are watching this interview. Again, Mehka, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you so much. I really had a great time today.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
You too.